August the 6th, 2024, the first day of the fall season, the coming of the autumn, the harvest season. My wonderful homeschool students and summer camper are going to give us a presentation on the 11th grader level AP US History Cold War space race. The program has been studied for a week, and Earl are going to give us a presentation. Go ahead, Earl.
I'm going to be talking about the space race. So the space race began in August 2nd, 1955, and it was during the Cold War, where there were a competition to achieve superior space flight. And during that time, the U.S. It started by the U.S. claiming intentionally that they would want to send satellites to space. 4 days later, the USSR also said the same thing. The launching of satellites were enabled by ballistic missiles during World War II, like the V-2 rocket. The competition was fast to fame, and Western public attention came very interested into it. The public attention grew by a lot when the launch of Sputnik came, also called the Sputnik crisis. After that, the USSR gained more momentum, more fame by sending a human to space, which is Yuri Gagarin. After Gagarin's flight, JFK announced to Congress if they can actually make a promise that they would make a man to the moon before the decade ended. So after that, a lot of German designers after World War II knew a lot about rockets. So they used German scientists, engineers, American engineers, and they used a lot of material. They practiced a lot on fuel, rocket fuel, and etc. So this event, after a while, they built the V-2 rocket. Not the V-2 rocket, the Saturn V or 5. It was considered one of the biggest rockets in history, but now it has been beaten by Starship. So the Saturn V could hold 3 people, 2 orbiters, and 2 landers. 2 orbiters and 3 people. So orbiters are kind of like orbit the moon and things. It's kind of shuttle once you think of it. Okay. USSR and after that, the USSR and the US started making heavy launch rockets, which means that such as the Saturn V is considered a heavy launch rocket. It was finally achieved in July of 1969, where the mission Apollo 11 sent 3 humans to the moon and landing 1 orbiter on the moon and making an orbiter orbit the moon. They came home safely, and Neil Armstrong became famous and because he was the first one to touch the moon. This was considered a US victory after that, since USSR have lost momentum and were still probably just launching satellites. But eventually they started working together in a détente, kind of peaceful era. After the USSR fell in around 1970, they eventually made an agreement to actually help work on the International Space Station, which is still known today. That is why when you enter the space station, you need to know Russian, because it was eventually made as a pact. This often benefited all of mankind. A lot of countries today now have rockets, such as most of Europe. A lot of people like China, Russia, and etc. and more still have rockets today. This was very interesting because this space race has led a lot of people and interesting people to know about what space is like. And moon dust is still stored in NASA today from the time where Neil Armstrong took some. And we're still going for Mars, and the space race would have taught us how to build efficient and reliable rockets to go to an area such as Mars, which is SpaceX is doing. So the USSR during that time was important, such as the analysis of the USSR and designers were usually based on a testing area. A lot of theories approached that the rockets they made were usually all based on the Saturn V2 rocket, V2 rocket, but eventually this was figured out that it was a no, and there was a lot of rockets made, and the Falcon Eagle became one of the best rockets in the world by America. It was one of the most reliable, which the Falcon Eagle took inspiration from the Saturn V rocket. In conclusion, this competition was very, very manly. It was very good. It didn't benefit not the USSR and not the US. It benefited mankind, proving that we could go beyond this world. Thank you for listening.